Good evening, Lodi. Great to see you all. Excited to have you here with us. I'm going to take 2 seconds and shut my phone off, or my watch off. Good to see you all. Thanks for joining us tonight for another View from 202. With me tonight is Nancy Long and David Faust, and I'm going to do a better introduction of both of them. First, just a couple reminders. Wear your masks. We are sitting here maskless because we have all been vaccinated. Life post vaccinations, I got to tell you, is incredible. I just feel so much safer being out and about. I went back to my gym today and swam and didn't feel like I had to be super paranoid. I'm getting together with my siblings and their partners for the first time in a year and a half because we've all gotten our shots. Please, if you've gotten your vaccination, hats off to you. If you haven't, get one. If you know people who are hesitant, just encourage them to really think of it's for our protection, but it's for the protection of everyone. The more people who do not get vaccinated, everyone who is susceptible to COVID means COVID has another opportunity to mutate. And that's how we're getting these variants, the British variant, the Brazil variant, the South Africa variant are happening because there are so many people that are unvaccinated, and viruses are very opportunistic. So they will mutate to get better at doing what they do. And the more we can make all of us not susceptible to COVID, we're going to starve it, essentially. So please, I know there are people, we were just discussing the whole, there are people who are concerned that there's a tracking chip in the, I have news for you all. You carry a tracking chip with you every time you walk out your door with your phone. If you have any web browser that you access, you are getting tracked everywhere. The government has nothing to do with vaccinations. Just please get your vaccination. Read the science. I am a news nerd and feel like I'm fairly well informed. Being mayor of Lodi, I felt like I had to keep up on the science. I feel incredibly fortunate to have the vaccinations available for us. And I feel very comfortable with the science behind them. And the whole Johnson & Johnson pause was a really good thing because it gave doctors an opportunity to look at what was happening, but also to look at treatment, because a blood clot often is treated with heparin, and it turns out for this type of blood clot, heparin is the opposite of what you want to do. So it gave the medical and health community an opportunity to pause, see what was happening, why it was happening, and to come up with treatment options. That blood clot is so rare. You probably have a better chance of getting struck by lightning than you do getting a blood clot. And now they have a treatment protocol if that were to happen. So please, I just can't tell you what an amazing opportunity it is to sit here with both of you without masks on. And I, of course, want to do a shout out to Blaze, our wonderful editor of the Lodi Valley Chronicle. He also is maskless. Yay! Yes, that would be Blaze. Okay, so that was the big community reminder. Also, there's a lot of great stuff happening in Lodi right now and over the summer. If you want to hear more about it, please check out the View from 202 from last week, where Bill Welch and Diana Carls were my guests. And we thought we'd maybe have a 20-minute conversation, and 50 minutes later we were wrapping up. There's just a lot of exciting things going on in our community. We are here tonight. I've mentioned last week, and you're going to hear this at every View from 202, educate and inform is the theme for this year and probably in the future for this broadcast. And I have been deeply concerned about our democracy. The little lowercase democracy. What has happened in our country, we have all seen up close and personal the last few years. And I'll just share a little bit of my concerns. So I ran for the Assembly in 2018. I ran in 2 elections. There was a special election that spring, and then the regular general election in the fall. I lost both of those races. I'm not bitter about losing, as the universe has a tendency to work things out. I'm honored, and this was a much better fit for me and my skill set to be the mayor of Lodi, and I'm thrilled to be here. But I saw the effects of gerrymandering, which is a big part of what we're going to talk about tonight. as a candidate running in one of the most gerrymandered districts in the state is the assembly district that we are part of here, and the 42nd Assembly District. And if you were, it's slivers of 5 different counties. The way the districts were, anyway, we're going to dive into it, but that helped me realize that the product of things like gerrymandering, the product of unfettered money into our political system, the product of having only 2 parties, and 2 parties that are so entrenched in maintaining power and differentiating themselves from the other power, we the people have suffered. We the people have lost representation. So I chose to run for mayor for a variety of reasons, but a big part of that is that it is a nonpartisan office. And I ran as a Democrat, and I will support candidates that I believe in, not necessarily always Democrats. But I stumbled across an organization in the fall of 2018, I think, or maybe 2019, called Represent Us. And their website is represent.us. And I fell in love with this organization because it is about repairing our democracy. It's nonpartisan. There are Tea Party folks who are involved in this, and there are people like myself that are pretty on the progressive end of the liberal spectrum. All of us are part of this because we are so concerned about our democracy. And if you just take a step back and look, since the pandemic hit last March, think about what has happened in our state and at the federal level. And when the people that we elect and entrust with our future and our health and well-being, when they are making decisions, not necessarily on what is in the best interest of people's health and well-being or what the people want, but rather those decisions are being made on what it's going to look like or how it's going to help us keep power, then we lose. And we're losing on so many levels. And so I have been fortunate enough, I got involved on the periphery of Represent Us, and I got to know David and Nancy when I got involved with the Fair Maps issue. So David is very involved with Represent Us, and he's been a joy to work with, and I'm really glad he came tonight. Nancy is one of Lodi's County Board Supervisors, so she has been real active. She's the chair of the County Library Board, has been on numerous committees at the county level. But all 3 of us came together because of the work around wanting to ensure that the districts that are drawn with the new census data, and all of our districts will change again, or the boundaries will change again. We have suffered tremendously the last 10 years because of what's happened. So anyway, I'm going to ask David to kind of walk us through Represent Us and these broader, yes, sir.
Before we start, can we define for our listeners, our viewers,
yes,
what gerrymandering is?
Yes, and when we get to the Fair Maps piece, we're going to start but thank you, Blaze. Absolutely. I wish you could come be part of this conversation. You're welcome to join us if you would like to.
May I?
Yeah, heavens yes. Pull up a chair, my friend. Absolutely. So what drew me to Represent Us was the efforts, the initiatives that they have that are about we the people having our voice heard, and we the people setting the agenda for a democratic republic. And we have lost our way as a democratic republic. So David, could you tell us a little bit about Represent Us and the work and the initiatives that you're involved in, and maybe how we could get involved?
Yeah, certainly. And thank you for the introduction, Ann. So Represent Us we have a local Wisconsin organization. There are 2 chapters currently. One is in Madison and one is based out of Milwaukee. As I said, it's affiliated with the larger Represent Us national organization, and also with Voters First Wisconsin, which is affiliated with Unite America, which is another national organization. But the big issues they are targeting was mail-in voting was a big thing. Like even before pre-pandemic, that was a reform we're pushing for, was mail-in voting universal, every state, like they do in red states and blue states. I think Montana, Utah, both have mail-in voting, very Republican states.
Oregon,
yep. And then the other one, money in politics, obviously that's always on the back burner, but it's always something we're trying to, get a handle on ever since Citizens United. And then gerrymandering, which we'll explain more on. And then the other big one is open primaries with ranked choice voting. Mm-hmm. So in Wisconsin, there is a wonderful group called Democracy Found, started by a Wisconsin native, Catherine Gale, and Austin Ramirez. I believe Catherine Gale falls on the more independent liberal side. Austin Ramirez is a conservative Republican, but they looked at the system in our country and our state, and they looked at it from a business perspective in terms of like getting results and creating an efficient system that is accountable to the shareholders, which is us, the voters, and the citizens of our democracy. And they came up with what we call in Wisconsin Final Five voting. And there is a Senate bill already in the Senate. It's circulating for co-sponsors. But what it does, Final Five voting is basically an open primary where the top 5 vote getters move on to the general election, regardless of party affiliation. Mm-hmm. And then voters get to rank their preference on the ballot from 1 through 5. And then when the votes are tallied, the lowest vote getter is eliminated, and all their second and third choice, or first, second, and third choice, like all of the people who chose them as their other choice, those votes are then reallocated to the other candidates. And this moves on down the list until one candidate receives 50% plus one of the vote. It's a way of ensuring that anyone who is elected to represent the citizens, we the people in office, no matter what, gets 50% plus one of the vote, so a majority of the vote instead of a plurality. So
define plurality.
So a plurality is, so if you have, say you have 3 candidates in a general election, a Republican, a Democrat, and an independent. Mm-hmm. So you can have someone win the election with less than 50% of the vote, which would be a plurality. You can have, so say the Democrat gets 42%, the Republican gets 43%. Now I have to test my math skills.
It's 45, 95.
Yeah. So, and then the other candidate gets 5%. So basically it eliminates the spoiler effect. Like if you have ranked choice voting, you will no longer have the spoiler effect. It creates incentive for more candidates to run, and it basically ends the plurality of someone winning without a majority of the votes. Mm-hmm.
And it allows people to vote for third parties without that being a throwaway vote.
Yes, exactly.
You end up voting for the person. You end up doing your research. I want to, Blaze and Nancy are running. I'm going to read your bios. I'm going to read your statements. I'm going to read your policies, and I'm going to vote for Nancy or Blaze or rank you based on how I think you're going to be as a representative, not on what party you belong to.
Or even if I'm in the same party. And this is a little passion of mine, because I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Republican. Mm-hmm. That I could vote Libertarian or Green or any other party because that's what I truly believe in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
you're not throwing away.
I'm not throwing it away. I can then go, if I can't have my best choice, here's the second choice.
Absolutely.
Okay, here's my third choice. So this gives an opportunity for those third-party candidates to actually participate.
It levels the playing field.
Yep.
And it gets back to one of the concerns that we hear about gerrymandering is my vote doesn't count.
Yes.
And instead of the people selecting whoever should be the winner is selecting their voters, basically.
Yeah.
But that was one of the more discouraging things for me as an elected person, to come up to and say, well, I don't vote anymore because it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
My vote is not going to count. And for
we hear that all the
democracy, what a
time.
horrible thing to have voters say.
Absolutely. And this isn't just a pie in the sky idea. There are states that are doing this.
Yeah. I mean, Alaska is the biggest one. In 2020, they passed a ballot measure. I think it was ballot measure 3 is what it was called. It didn't introduce, it's a final 4 voting. So it's a variation on this where 4 candidates advance to the general election and then you use ranked choice voting, but it's the open primary system. So it is pretty much this exact system will be used in Alaska. Maine also does ranked choice voting.
New York State just finalized?
The city, New York City.
New York City, okay.
And Minneapolis. So
Okay.
our neighboring state in Minnesota, there is ranked choice voting. I think in Minneapolis and St. Paul, one of the two of the Twin Cities has it for their local elections. Because a lot of states will allow local. Wisconsin's not one of those states, but a lot of states will allow a local municipality to implement its own voting system. So in Minnesota, they don't have to do ranked choice voting for the whole state, but a municipality is free to adopt, and they did. And many other, like New York State, that's also how that came about. And there's other cities, I forget all of them, but Alaska is the big one, and Maine uses ranked choice voting in their general elections as well. Not the open primary though, unfortunately.
And what we're seeing in the country right now, so believing in democracy, my personal belief is that we should cast the net as we should give everybody every opportunity possible to vote. We should have early voting. Voting should be a national holiday. People should be able to vote on the weekends. People should be able to vote by mail. But damn it, our right as citizens in this democracy is to be able to vote. And with the laws that are being proposed now, based on lies, I will put out there, but these laws are designed to make it as difficult as possible to vote or restrict access in some way, shape, or form. And that is not democratic at all. So Represent Us is about restoring we the people's power and rights in a democracy. And ranked choice, I know Represent Us, another thing that I was really intrigued by was term limits.
Yes.
The Constitution did define term limits for the Senate. They've never been enforced. To have, again,
there are?
Yeah, yes.
Okay. I will go look.
I
will do my research and go look that
That is
up.
something I have to look into as well. I did not know
So
that.
I don't know this firsthand. I can't tell you where, but a friend of mine who wrote a book on this did say that there are term limits defined. They have never been enforced. To have, so I'll speak for myself, to see the same people sitting in Washington, D.C. who were there 40 years ago, and any research you see or in your life, if you're a young person, you'll see this as you get older, the higher up the food chain you go, the less interaction you have with the people you represent. And one of my biggest pet peeves with people who have been in, I don't care what party, but who have been in DC forever, is they have no clue what it means to be a single parent working a minimum wage job, trying to make ends meet and feed your family and have a little dignity and a little life. And that, I don't know if term limits are what the term limits should be, but we can't have people representing us who are so insulated and so wealthy that our moral compass is validated by how those with the least live in our society. I didn't say that very eloquently, but we should be judged by how those with the least are able to provide. And we have gotten so far away from that. So this is something I'm so passionate about, and I'm so excited to have the chance to have this discussion tonight, because organizations like Represent Us, and if you go to represent.us and you look at who's involved and who their advisory board is and who their leadership structure is, it is across the board, and it's diverse, and it's people from every corner of the political spectrum, because we all came together because we're concerned about our democracy.
Can I take you back just a second?
Yeah.
There's a line from the TV show The West Wing that
Yes.
sticks in my head
Okay.
repeatedly. We have term limits in the United States. They're called elections.
Yes. I'm sorry.
And the thing is, that's our fault. As voters, that's up to us to say.
To a certain extent.
No,
But when gerrymandering happens, when unfettered money is poured into politics,
True.
it's no longer in our hands, because the deck is stacked so against the average voter because of the power structure and where the money is. Cracking this is nearly impossible without organizations that are going to work at the grassroots, without all of us coming together to demand change and demand. I'm sorry, we are the richest country in this world. And it is embarrassing how far away from our democratic values we have gotten. And the destruction of so much of our society has happened. We were just discussed. So as the mayor of, so I'm going a little off track, but as a mayor, so the Wisconsin, there are kind of two revenue sources for municipalities. There's shared revenue, which the state gives us, which comes from your tax dollars. And then there's property tax money. So in the last 15 years, the amount of shared revenue we get from the state of Wisconsin is about half of what it was 15 years ago. At the same time, we have been collared, handcuffed with levy limits, and Wisconsin has the strictest levy limits of any state in the country. So we're a municipality. You take this money away, half of it, and then you tell us that we can only raise, and the formula for levies is only based on net new construction. It's a whole thing. But that means if you're a community, a rural community, and you're not growing, you have no opportunity. So you want to look at crumbling roads, crumbling infrastructure, lack of broadband, lead drinking pipes. That all happens because we have no opportunity to even keep up with the maintenance because we're not getting the money from the state, and I don't think it should all be on property tax payers. So there's got to be a better way to get out of this cycle. But I'm telling you, we are falling further and further behind. And then we end up borrowing money, and we end up trying to turn our heads upside down to institute fees to get some more revenue coming in just to keep I mean, we all know what the streets are like in our neighborhoods. And we talk about the big price tag of some of the stuff coming out of DC. Well, I'm sorry, these cans have been kicked down the road long enough that we either do it or we face the fact that this country is not going to be what it was for many of us when we were growing up, because we are at that critical point right now. And I feel like it's go big or go home, because we've just fallen so far behind, and there's only so long you can kick a can down the road.
But
I would like to.
Please.
I would like to.
I
agree
was
with
going to
Blaze
say,
on one thing.
this all comes back to what you're talking about.
I actually agree. I do feel like it is our fault, though. I mean, I get that gerrymandering is part of the issue and how we run our elections, but I do blame voters as well. I do, because we allow ourselves to be lied to constantly. I have to vote for this person because I don't like that party. It's like no one's looking at, I mean, you could beat gerrymandering if you could just get people to see that some of the candidates they're voting for are just total and complete idiots, crap, genuinely bad people.
Yeah.
But it's because of the letter after their name. They're like, I can't vote for the Republican. I can't vote for the Democrat. Even if the Republican or the person you prefer is just a total and complete swindler. They're a grifter. They lie. They cheat. But that is on us.
Yes, I will agree with you there. Absolutely.
And then back to redistricting and gerrymandering, we get this because they're set up to support that situation. Where we elect the same people over and over again because of the way the districts are defined. We're stuck over and over again. We aren't offered the candidates that would appeal to the broad.
And Gallup this year, they have been tracking who self-identifies as Republican, Democrat, or Independent. And for the first time this year, there are more independents than there are Republicans or Democrats self-identified. Now, a lot of them lean one way or the other, but over 50% are saying, I don't want that party, I don't want that party. I want something in the middle.
Yes.
Well, don't you think too, though, that part of it is we have so much inaction.
Yes.
The people are just
Apathy.
totally frustrated. I know from my perspective as a county board member, with the big issues that we have facing us, we don't get anywhere because we get the same answer from the same folks over and over again.
If we get an answer.
As a voter, it becomes no choice. I mean, and it becomes either you don't vote or now you're saying more going towards the independent side, which I can see that. It's frustrating with both camps.
But I can't vote independent because currently I'm
It's
throwing my vote away.
Well, ask a partisan. There's no such thing as an independent. You can't have that. I'm just saying, that's what they say. Like, okay, so that is the number one argument when you bring up a nonpartisan redistricting commission in a legislature, the first thing they'll say is, "Well, there's no such thing as nonpartisan." It's like,
Oh,
well,
I'm one right here.
And that
I
came
feel
Put me on the list.
When I went and spoke at the Columbia County Board about nonpartisan redistricting, there was a county board supervisor who said there is no such thing. Okay, so we all have our political leanings, okay? We all have our preferences.
It's
However,
an excuse. That's
it
all
is an excuse. It's a, pardon my language, a bullshit excuse, because there are people who are able to set things aside and do things for the right reason.
I want to say something. We all have our leanings, but a leaning is not the same as a party affiliation.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Yes. And I'm the same way as you. I'm an independent. I have my leanings, but at the same time, it's not, I'm not involved in fair maps or nonpartisan redistricting because I want a certain party to win over another. It's just, it's more about accountability and trying to get people,
Right.
like it's more of a positive in my mind. Like everybody's always trying to view it as a negative. Like, how does this affect my party or that party, or how does this improve my chance? It's like, for me, it's accountability to the voters. Like, we are the shareholders of our democracy, and gerrymandering takes away our voice, our collective voice, and that it's accountability.
Absolutely.
And if you have accountability, you have better results.
And with gerrymandering, I think every day I hear from people, well, I contacted my representative and they agree with me, but they'll vote with their party. Gerrymandering ensures that our representatives don't have to be accountable to the people. And there are several things statewide. For instance, marijuana legalization, medical cannabis, recreational cannabis. There's like 70% of the state that says they want this to happen. We are surrounded by states that have it legal. Illinois charges 35% tax on what you purchase down there, and that is money for the state. People in those states are getting the health benefits of a naturally occurring plant, not a pharmaceutically driven or developed chemical going into your bodies. People in the state want it. But the people that run our legislature right now aren't going to let it happen. Partially because a Democratic governor proposed it, and heaven forbid they should let that happen. But also, they don't have to be accountable to the people, because you know what? With the districts the way they are, they're going to get reelected.
So, I don't know if we've defined gerrymandering.
I was just going to say,
sorry.
we've been talking about,
Yes.
can we go back and define it,
Yes.
please?
What you,
Education.
Sorry,
man.
yes.
Education.
I'll shut up for a few
I
minutes.
feel like,
That's all.
Nancy, do you have a good?
Well, I will attempt one. Gerrymandering is the setting of districts to benefit one party or to keep that party in power. And just for a little history lesson, this goes back, I think, 100 years or better.
I think it's longer. I think it's like early 1800s.
I think you're right, to the state of Massachusetts, when there was a governor who was Governor Gerry, who drew some lines to help support his own power structure, and what they drew up came close to looking like a salamander. So
That's
that
right, I
became
forgot
gerrymandering. And I guess just further as we're along kind of defining and putting it in the context of Wisconsin, Wisconsin's, I think, one of the original attempts to draw maps was in the 1920s, and really kind of stayed pretty much the same till about 1953, and then into 1960s when the population in this state really started to shift. We had big urban growth as opposed to the rural areas. So redistricting, which happens by law, it's required to happen after each census, became much more of a controversial issue. And then in the 1960s as well, during this time period, is when the Supreme Court reaffirmed the idea of one person, one vote. So that became some of the thinking, good thinking behind setting up district lines. So there's your history, brief history lesson.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but the way it works is the party that is in power.
So it doesn't. The Constitution of the state says the legislature.
Yes,
They always, whenever you talk to a representative, especially of the party in power, they will say the party in power draws. No, it says the legislature. It doesn't say the party in power.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
It says the legislature.
Okay.
So they're actually it's supposed, obviously you get a majority of the votes. That's,
Mhm.
But-
And that's why that's why both Democrats and Republicans have been guilty of.
Yes.
doing
Yeah.
this.
Yeah, absolutely.
and there is a solution to this from Iowa. You can get rid of partisan redistricting, which is what we have, and implement nonpartisan redistricting. Iowa has a model. Wisconsin would only have to tweak it to make it constitutional with a few word changes here and there, and it would apply to our state perfectly.
What is that model? Because I know of a few of them that are being proposed with the new computer models and our ability to really tweak things.
So this one is supposed to, so the Iowa model is completely, this isn't old. It's like, I think they've implemented it in the 80s or 90s. So it's like a 40-year-old.
Relatively new, actually.
Is it? Is it newer than that?
Well,
Yeah, new relatively, but before the computer age, right?
Yeah,
It's not an algorithm. This is
They don't use algorithms, and I think Iowa
It is.
specifically says do not use like party affiliation data. They're not supposed to use data. It's supposed to be, I don't exactly know how they set up their commission, but I think it has something. And then there's all sorts of like remedies. If someone disagrees here in the legislature, they have like fail-safe remedies. The legislature does get a vote on it, so they're still involved. And then, it goes on down the line, but it's worked for them.
And if you want to see what gerrymandering looks like, look at district maps from the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, and the 2010s to see I remember in 2011 going to vote, and my dad said, yeah, we're not in District 47 anymore, we're in District 42. And I was like, when did that happen? And because I was not that politically aware. And suddenly this city that was part of, or this area that was part of the 47th for my lifetime was part of a new district called the 42nd. And it's the power of statistics and computer programs and algorithms that they are able to go down to the street level to draw these maps. And
they did it. Yeah. 2011, they did it in a law firm across from the Capitol. The legislators were kept in the dark about their districts. They only got, I think they allowed the Republicans in to see that just their specific district, and they had to sign a non-disclosure agreement. So they couldn't say anything to anyone in public. And then they voted on the maps and passed them. The governor signed them because they had a trifecta back then. And shady is the nicest word you can use for what they did in 2011.
Incredibly unethical, incredibly undemocratic.
If you look at the current maps, and I hadn't done this, and someone mentioned Wisconsin in the maps.
Mhm.
You look at the maps, and what strikes me is in the northeast corner,
Mhm.
that congressional district suddenly goes, whoop! Like, why does it do that?
Yep.
And look at our
Look at
our
the
assembly.
42nd.
Yeah, our assembly district in Columbia County, they shaved off Columbus and they shaved off Portage because they tend to vote Democratic. So it's all of Columbia County except the two largest municipalities. And then it's part of Marquette, Fond du Lac, Dodge, Green Lake.
Sorry.
Oh, hush, Siri. And so it is now part of 5 counties. The city of Fond du Lac has 3 assembly districts in Fond du Lac. Anyway, it's a whole thing.
Isn't Dane in there too? Because wasn't part of the reason they drew the 42nd with that little dip down was to get the former representative
Yes,
has
Windsor.
has a farm out there, and so they drew the district so he could be in it, and so it dips down a little
I forgot there's
peninsula
a little
into Dane
teeny
County.
tiny, yes.
For
You're right.
and that's the other thing about the Iowa model. It does not take legislators' addresses into account when they draw the districts. So you can't go, oh, we want this guy to be able to come back or this lady to be able to come back. So we have to obviously, do a little carve out to get their address in there.
Mm-hmm. So the last 10 years, we have reaped the lack of benefits of gerrymandering. As I said, you can trace back that. So from my perspective, no one with any skin in the game, no one with anything to gain or lose from these district lines should be in the room when the districts are figured out. So anyone who's in political power it's just like this, it's abstaining from a vote because you have a conflict of interest. There could not be a greater conflict of interest than being in that room when those district lines are drawn. So we have been going through sort of an awakening the last year and a year and a half, and you've probably seen a lot of articles in the paper. But can you guys kind of talk about where we're at right now? So that the Census Bureau just released the broad statistics. So Wisconsin's not going to lose or gain any representation in DC, but the numbers come out in August. And that's when kind of the rubber hits the road. So what will happen? And I think people have heard of the People's Maps Commission that the governor put together, that's been meeting around the state. So kind of how does all of this work and what's going to happen? And how can we impact
Start out and
anything?
then you
I was
can
going to say,
chime
you're on
into
the
it.
county board, so you actually
Right.
have to participate in
Right.
the redistricting.
The counties are to create redistricting committees.
Okay.
And several counties, it's my understanding, have created them. Columbia County has not yet. We got an brief update at our last county board meeting from the county clerk that they were still waiting on the numbers. But the creation of that redistricting committee is to be done. The county board is supposed to approve it, and it's supposed to be a broad-based committee to look at in Wisconsin, the districts are equivalent are wards, and to look across the county then to look and see if there should be, because of any shifts of population, where those ward lines then would fall. So that's kind of from the county level where it would initiate,
Okay.
and then bubble up from there, I guess, to the state in terms of who would draw.
And is this the procedure that the governor has outlined, or is this
No,
how
this
things
is
work?
the general. And
Okay.
didn't the state supersede you guys? I don't know. Were you on the board in 2011? But I thought there was something weird in 2011 where the state. Normally the counties draw first.
Yeah.
And then the state uses some of the lines because counties see where their populations and communities of interest are. But last time they superseded the counties, correct? Yeah.
And so then, the importance to the county is, of course, elections, to be sure that the wards and so on are lined up correctly for elections. But you're right, beyond that, the legislature took over and using algorithms and whatever else they used in those secret rooms to come up with the plan. But now, Governor Evers in January of 2020 created this People's Maps Commission. He had a 3-judge panel pull together the names. It's a 9-member panel, very broad-based. There is, I think there's some teaching professionals on there. There's some medical professionals on there. There's a librarian on there. And then they have now held hearings in all of the current congressional districts in the state of Wisconsin, and gathered testimony from, I think, literally thousands of people submitted testimony. David and I participated in one of the hearings, all done online, all done virtually. But I thought, at least I didn't get an opportunity to listen to all of them, but I was impressed by the broad-based support and concern. And of course, this has been borne out in the polls, that over 70% of Wisconsin folks want a nonpartisan process for redistricting. And I think now 56 counties have either approved a resolution or passed a referendum supporting a nonpartisan.
And none of them with
process.
less than 70% of the people.
Even the most Republican of counties, like I think the counties that voted the most for the Republican candidate in the 2020 election, there were on the same ballot. There was a ballot referendum asking the voters of that county if they wanted a nonpartisan redistricting process, and even in those counties that were deeply partisan Republican, said very affirmatively, yes, we want nonpartisan redistricting.
It's, to me, I think everybody pretty much wants to say, hey, we play fair.
Yeah, exactly.
And Wisconsin for centuries has been known as a transparent, clean, ethical state.
Right.
And this closed room redistricting was the beginning of us looking, forgive me, more like Illinois. And I will, so a little sidebar, and you all who watch this show know that I have been harping on getting involved. And so a couple of us went to speak at the county board last July. We had asked the county board to, the executive committee of the county board controls what the county board takes up. And some of us went to speak to the executive committee to ask them, we were simply asking them to put a non-binding referendum, a ballot initiative on the ballot in November this last year, the presidential election, non-binding. It would cost the county nothing, but it would get all of us who live in Columbia County the opportunity to say, do we want fair maps or not? And our county governance is broken, and we were shut down faster. It was not a good experience. And there were really no excuses, except they really didn't think that, even though it was non-binding and it wouldn't cost them a darn thing, and excuse me, again, democracy, and we should hear from the people. But there was no getting this on the referendum, on the ballot in November. And we are one of a handful of counties that didn't address this. Counties that people who care about democracy want to hear from their citizens. That if you are an elected official, you ought to want to hear from the people you're representing. So part of this for me too is getting all of you watching to figure out a way to get involved, because if January 6th taught us anything, it is that our democracy is incredibly fragile. And if the results of over 500,000 people dying from the pandemic, if that has not made you realize that there is a very important role for a strong government by the people and for the people to take care of us, then you haven't been paying attention. And you ought to be damn mad at what's going on. So there are ways to get involved. And my choice for my life's legacy is to feel like I've left this democracy better than when I started getting active. And you need to speak out. You need to let folks know how you're hearing and how you're feeling. You need to contact them, whether you think they're going to listen to you or not. So the numbers come out, the county does its thing, that floats up to the state. What happens, and how do our next district maps get drawn?
Well, I think it is going to come down to, as David was suggesting, there's probably going to be a set of maps drawn up by the legislature, and the Fair Maps Commission will come up with a map. And the current feeling is that this will wind up in the courts, Supreme Court, as they did the last time around.
And we didn't do so well the last time.
So this time, so the difference between last time and this time was they had a governor who signed the maps. They had a trifecta in 2011. So the Republican-controlled legislature drew the maps, went to the Republican governor, signed them, and the lawsuits. They did change a few districts at the lower court level because I think they were considered racial gerrymanders, which was a violation of the Voting Rights Act. Mm-hmm. And then there was the larger case that was just gerrymandering in general based on, partisan affiliation. That's the one that went to the Supreme Court. What's different this time is the Democratic governor will act as a backstop. He's not going to sign unless they actually are able to work together and come to some kind of compromise on maps.
All evidence to the contrary.
That is accurate. That is accurate. He will likely say no and veto the maps. And, the People's Maps Commission is going to have their maps, which they're drawing theirs based on the criteria of communities of interest, which is what they took testimony on. I think.
What do you mean by communities of interest?
So communities of interest are community. So you can go narrow or broad. So you can, Lodi is its own community of interest, and you can build communities of interest around high schools, rural school districts. But in a broader sense, it's more of at a state senate or assembly level, it would be more these are rural counties, all with similar economies, similar demographics. These people all have similar interests. So the representative shouldn't be trying to represent a weird suburb down here as well as this rural area up here. So I think the People's Maps Commission goal is to keep most communities of interest together. I think they are looking at competitiveness as well. There's a couple other criteria.
Those folks who would like to really dig into this, the People's Maps Commission, of course, has a website. If you Google People's Maps Commission, Wisconsin, you'll find they have their criteria listed, which I think it came out not too long ago. And it's one page, and they put their criteria in 4 groups, basically. One is the community of interest that David was just talking about. A third is population deviation. In other words, the voting rights thing, that you want to make sure that you've got one person, one vote included. Partisan, fair partisan, or whatever partisan fairness, they call it. That among the mapping plans that satisfy all higher priorities, a preference will be given for plans that tend to lead to proportional outcomes. So you want to have not a specific population in each, but you should have relatively similar numbers.
So that any candidate would have an equal chance of getting elected.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the first set of criteria is contiguity, which is you want to make sure that the parts of the district are physically connected.
No islands like there are now.
Yeah, right. You will eliminate the islands. Compactness, and to preserve political boundaries. And by the political boundaries here, they're meaning that towns and counties
or school districts,
you should respect those boundaries to the extent that you can. So to me, the criteria that they've set out are really are common sense
and fair.
And fair, exactly, and based on the idea that hopefully ultimately we're all working more towards the common good than we are the political identity that we constantly see fighting out.
And the state legislature will be drawing maps that will be mostly about keeping incumbents safe and making sure they maintain control. So that is the difference. They will come out with a map, the People's Maps Commission, the legislature will come out with a map, probably just the majority alone will do it without input from the minority party. Tony Evers, the governor, will likely veto the Republican drawn maps, and they will wind up either in state district court or federal district court, or maybe even the state. They likely might wind up in front of the state Supreme Court. And then the goal of the People's Maps Commission is, when courts look at things, they'll take in a lot of evidence. So having the People's Maps Commission maps there for them to compare the legislative maps to, that alone will be a good thing to have this time, because they'll be able to look, oh, this is a map that was considering, all of these criteria. And then this is a map drawn by, partisan politicians, and it really is about incumbent protection and less competitive districts.
So we'll have something to compare and contrast between the two sets of maps. That's a good thing.
You had asked Anne earlier about how people could get involved and stay informed on this issue. There is a Columbia County Fair Maps team group, and a couple of us here in Lodi, and we belong to the group too, has done various things just to keep it in the public eye. I know David has written some letters to the editor, and just again, as several people have said, let's keep it accountable this time, and not let it happen behind closed doors, but keep it out there. So that's one thing people can do.
Great.
And just to stay involved and stay up to date on what's happening with it. And
so you can reach out to any of us. Patty Herman here in Lodi is kind of the leader of our group. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah, Patty is, yes, she's the organizer leader.
Yeah, she's amazing. She newly elected to the library board. Yay, Patty. So the other thing I think, and chime in, folks, but
if there's any questions that people have that they want more explanation about, feel free to let me know, and I will reach out and talk to people who know what they're talking about, and have them write articles and explain it.
And I can guarantee once those two sets of maps are available, we will be back here to talk about what those two sets of maps look like and how you can let your voice be heard or make your voice heard.
And you can do that now by
Yeah.
writing to your representatives
Absolutely.
and saying,
Yep.
hey,
Absolutely.
we want to win, but we want to win fair.
Yes.
And so I know we're getting close to time here, but I think in kind of wrapping this up, if you are unhappy with where we are right now as a country, as a state, if you feel like you are disconnected from your representatives, or if you feel like our leadership is not responsive to the concerns of the citizens, this is not the time to not pay attention. You need to be paying attention. And the Lodi Valley Chronicle, which I love because it's a lot of us write columns for it, and Blaze is doing a great job of trying to really embrace the community voice, which we lost when our local newspaper became part of a network of newspapers. And it's not the Lodi Enterprise anymore. It's the Lodi Poinet, whatever it is. It's still the Lodi Enterprise, but it's two communities being served. We no longer have that voice of people who live here in Lodi and publish a newspaper, except Blaze, who's doing the online, and
Doing the best I can.
and you're doing a great job. And you just need to stay aware of what's happening. And I promise you, we will continue these conversations. David, Represent Us is having a big event coming up.
Yeah, we are doing a Final Five launch event on May 4th. We're basically trying to grow the grassroots of our group in Wisconsin. And I mean, if anybody wants to be involved with it, you can go to the Represent Us website or the Voters First of Wisconsin, Rich Eng. You'll find emails and contacts on those, and you can get involved. You send people an email. Most people in this reform space are very happy to send you a response and try to recruit you. So if anyone wants to be more involved, it's easy to get there. That's all I did 2 years ago. I read a book. I snooped around on the internet. I found a contact email. I emailed and I wound up on the phone, and here I am today. and people will recruit you because we're desperate for people. And Democracy Found is a great Wisconsin group to look at. They're the ones who started the Final Five voting push. Again, you can go to the website. I think I have the email in front of me, Sarah at democracyfound.org. She would be happy. Sarah Eskridge, she's a fantastic person organizer. She would be happy to, talk to you about Democracy Found and how it started and Final Five voting and how you can help. And she'll probably direct you to us. And my, as a final, I just want to say, historically, this isn't normal. Like, this doesn't have to be this way. Like, in the 90s, people fought. We had, Republicans, Democrats, conservative, liberal, progressive, whatever stupid term you want to apply to anything. It existed, but it wasn't life and death. Like, people got along. Like, Wisconsin was known for good governance. We had a Republican governor all through the 90s, and Republicans controlled part of the state, the legislature. And
we got stuff done.
We had fair maps, they passed things. So
Yes.
this current state of political affairs, the way people, this is the way it's always. No, it's not. This is not normal. We are not in a normal space.
And we don't have to take it. I mean,
yes,
folks, democracy is messy. It is not. I tell you, as a mayor, there are times when I sit and think, oy gewalt committees and what, but you just got to deal with messy, and it's supposed to be messy. It's not. A democracy is hard work, and if you live in the United States and you believe in what democracy is about, this is unacceptable. Where we are as a state, where we are as a country, where we are as a county is unacceptable, and things have to change for our kids, our great-grandchildren. It's just like climate change in the environment. Either we do something now, or we just ride the train to the destruction that January 6th, if there was any other lesson that you took away from January 6th, is we were this close to losing our democracy. We were this close to becoming an authoritarian government. We were this close to losing 200 plus years of work on a process and a a country that was founded on some ideals that we all believe in.
I have a lot of friends in China, friends from the United Kingdom, from various countries in Europe, Germany, Zimbabwe, and I had a whole lot of them going, what the hell just happened?
Tell me about it.
Could I just, for my
Please.
final, just to throw out a couple of things. One is, and I should know the website by heart, but Fair Maps Group has a website with a lot of toolkits and resources. We have no short of, again, of ways for people to get involved and to learn about this issue. They're out there. And then the League of Women Voters, which is a wonderful
great organization.
Also has done a great deal of work behind Fair Maps. And so they have all kinds of literature out, but also another place that you can go and learn more about this topic.
That's great. And our county board is, they're all up for re-election in the spring. So getting involved doesn't mean you got to go to meetings. It doesn't mean that you need to get up in front of groups and speak. Getting involved is getting involved in ways that fit into your life. This doesn't have to be stressful. It doesn't have to be high stakes. Getting involved simply means reaching out to one of us or somebody in one of these organizations.
Always happy to hear from people.
Yes, we're thrilled.
So, yes.
And we, if you want to write a letter at home, if you want to text people, if you want whatever you're comfortable with, but do something. If you care, do something.
Even if it's just learning.
Yes, and becoming educated.
And
Absolutely.
writing, and the simplest thing you can do is call or write your legislature. Figure out who your assemblyman is or who your state senator is. Write them a letter, call them, leave them, email them. Tell them what you think. Super
easy. Yesterday, I sent an email or letter to the Joint Finance Committee for their budget hearings, and I just went the legislature. You get their addresses. Super easy. If you live in the city of Lodi, John Plummer is your assembly representative. Joan Balwig is your state senator. Just Google their names. You'll get their contact information. You can call them. You can email them. You can send them a letter via snail mail, whatever you want to do, but let them know what you're thinking, what you're concerned about. And if you didn't know it, Wisconsin does a biennial budget. So what they're working on right now is what we're going to live with for 2 years. So another way to just do something is to be educated. What Nancy said is spot on. Just learn. None of us came at this. You saw from the questions I've asked today, I don't know everything. I mean, it's complicated. It's messy. You don't have to know everything. You just got to care. You got to care and reach out. And that's all. So we're going to keep hammering at these issues. I want all of you, though. I don't care who you are. You have something to offer. Our community will be better. Our county will be better with your head at the table making decisions. Please think about getting involved. Nancy and I are happy to mentor you. December is when you got to circulate nominating papers. It sounds scarier than it is. We will go door to door with you. You have something to give. Your voice is needed. That's what a democracy is all about.
Hey, I ran for school board many, many years
ago.
If I can do it, anyone can do it.
I remember my dad saying, "You're too liberal to get elected." He was right.
Thank God Kenneth's trying and beat me.
Yeah, yes. Everything happens for a reason. I'm sitting here as mayor because I didn't get elected. But anyway, I want to thank Blaze and Nancy and David for being my guests tonight. They will be back with us this summer as things start to unfold, but please, please, please reach out. Share this view from 202 on your Facebook page and other social media. Let's make sure people get a chance to learn more about these issues. Thank you for your time, Lodi. Stay masked up, get vaccinated, and enjoy the beautiful weather. Thank you.